Hi everyone, season's greetings to you all. Welcome to the 38th Karnataka AYCon 2021 online workshop on headache. This conference should have been held in Davangere, which is a major educational hub in the state of Karnataka, and as an offline program where you could have enjoyed the legendary hospitality of the Davangere team of otolaryngologists. Unfortunately, we are forced to be online due to the COVID-19 scare. Whatever, this program is very dear to me because the JJMC Davangere is my alma mater and all the members of the organizing committee are either my teachers, colleagues or friends. This topic on headache is very close to my heart as successfully diagnosing and treating a patient with a headache is quite challenging. I love challenges. This is a vast subject. Condensing and teaching this topic in 1 hour in a logical way was even more bigger challenging task for me. Nevertheless, with this presentation, I made an honest attempt to bring you the essential points. As this is a recorded presentation, there is no opportunity for a question and answer session. However, you can always write to me or call me for clarification. I'll be very happy to clarify those doubts. Headache is a major global health problem. Headache is the most frequent reason for which a patient seeks medical attention. And headache is one of the most common disorders of the central nervous system also. About 47% of general adult population have at least one episode of headache in their lifetime. And about 1.7 to 4% of the adult population have chronic headaches in general population. To understand headache, it is very important to study the classification of headache proposed by the IHS or International Headache Society, who have studied 220 different entities of headache and classified them under three broad groups. And these three broad groups have been further subdivided into 14 subdivisions. And these 14 subdivisions have been again classified under subcategories to include these 220 individual entities. Majority of patients come to an otolaryngologist or an ENT surgeon, as we are head and neck surgeons also, and most patients think headache is due to sinusitis. Other than ENT surgeons, the patient also visit either ophthalmologists, neurologists or primary care physicians. Evaluation and management of headache follows the same basic tenets of modern medicine used for diagnosing any other disease entity. It starts with a thorough history. Okay, most of the headaches can be diagnosed with an accurate history alone. Hence, and an otolaryngologist must spend a sufficient time, have patience, and spend 90% of his time and efforts on history alone. And this detailed history should be followed by a thorough physical examination. And this physical examination starts with a general physical examination, mainly because, for example, one of the commonest cause of vertigo in India is because of anemia followed by hypertension, as I have seen in my experience. Okay, and we need to note these points in general physical examination. And this general physical examination should be followed by a thorough systemic examination to rule out secondary causes of vertigo. And then comes the ENT head and neck examination, where we need to examine thoroughly entire ENT system along with oral cavity, temporomandibular joint and neck also. And this should be followed by a comprehensive neurological examination. And if any signs of CNS pathology are seen during neurological examination, and we should refer to a neurosurgeon or a neurologist for further clarification. Physical examination should be followed by a diagnostic nasal endoscopy if rhinogenic headache is suspected. We should specifically look for deviated nasal septum with septal spurs, which may be impinging on the lateral wall of the nose, and a concha bullosa or a paradoxical middle turbinate, and if there is a narrowing of the osteometal unit, and also look for mucosal contact points. We should also look for if any other nasal pathologies are there, such as nasal polyposis, and also we should look for mucopurulent nasal discharge, which may indicate a sinusitis. Okay. If required, patient should be sent to our ophthalmology colleagues for a complete ophthalmological examination, and we should specifically rule out any refractive errors which may be giving rise to the headache, and also a fundus examination to rule out secondary causes of headache and look for papilledema to rule out secondary cause of headache, and also a tonoscopic examination to measure intraocular pressure to rule out glaucoma, which is another cause of a ophthalmological cause of headache. And if required, a minimal blood work is required. This blood work includes the CBC to rule out anemia, and also to rule out any infection, raised leukocyte count, and also ESR to study any inflammatory pathology, specifically giant cell arteritis, where ESR is raised, and CRP again to see if any inflammatory pathology is going on to rule out any secondary cause of headache. FBS mainly to rule out diabetes, and also a blood urea nitrogen to rule out any secondary pathology, renal causes. A CT scan of the PNS and sometimes brain may be required whenever rhinogenic headache is suspected, when patient is not responding to the treatment, or when a surgery is contemplated. CT brain mainly to rule out CNS causes of pathology. Okay, when we suspect either subarachnoid hemorrhage or meningitis, a secondary cause of vertigo, a CSF lumbar puncture and CSF analysis may be required, and MRI may be required whenever the red flag signs indicating CNS pathology. History should start with duration of headache, which helps us to understand whether it is acute or subacute or chronic headache. And onset of the headache is very important. We should find out whether it's a sudden onset, gradual, or intermittent. Noting location of the headache is also very important. We should ask the patient to point the location of the headache specifically with a finger. And also severity of the headache, we should find out whether it is mild, moderate, or severe headache whenever some early intervention is required. And quality of the headache is also very important. We should note whether it's a dull aching, throbbing, or stabbing like or electric shock kind of headache, or lancinating headache, or excruciating headaches we should find out. We should also note aggravating factors such as lifting weights, food and beverages, drugs, activity, stress, and many other conditions. Okay, these points are important, which lead us towards diagnosis of vertigo. As I stressed earlier, is it head? Is it a ache? Location of the headache is very important. We should ask the patient to point their fingers toward the location of the headache. We should discriminate between headache, facial pain, and neck pain. And also we should specifically find out, is it really an ache, that is pain, as often patients confuse many other symptoms for a pain. Headache, facial pain, and neck pain are distinct entities caused by different entities. So finding out and classifying them as these three entities very important for understanding the cause of the headache and also effectively manage the patient. Continuing with history, age of onset is very important. Majority of the common headaches, they are usually seen in middle-age group. And the frequency of episodes is also important. They point towards diagnosis, and also temporal patterns of the headache, and temporal association of the headache with the different physiological or pathological events such as pregnancy we should note, and also response to the treatment. What response patient is getting, is he happy with the treatment being done? That means that also confirms accuracy of our diagnosis. And also family history is important, as many headaches they are familial. 60% of the headaches in women, they are familial, and also about 40% of the headaches in men are familial. Knowing the duration of the headache is very important. Acute headaches may last from hours to days, the subacute headaches days to weeks, and chronic headaches weeks to months. but there may be considerable overlaps between these headaches. However, if it is an acute headache, we should be alarmed. It may ring a bell about some sinister problems. The common cause of acute headache are usually the tension type headache to start with, followed by migraine, upper respiratory tract infections, and a sinusitis, hypertension, and later the cerebral tumor or cervical spine degeneration or a subarachnoid hemorrhage, meningitis, ophthalmic zoster, temporal arteritis, or a subarachnoid hemorrhage. So whenever a patient presents with an acute headache, we should keep these conditions in mind. Whenever a patient presents with an acute headache, we should look for following warning signs to rule out serious issues. We should ask for if it is an abrupt onset, or it's a new headache, or uh, a new pattern of headache with an existing headache. We should also ask for if headache is triggered by an exertion. Okay, we should also rule out postural headaches, and also look for any neurological signs and symptoms, focal or general. We should also ask for history of head and neck trauma, sometimes which may be trivial and patient may not remember or may not consider significant, but we should specifically ask for history of head and neck trauma. We should also look for fever. Weight loss is very important. Sometimes it may indicate a malignant pathology somewhere in the body. And also we should ask for any systemic disease, concomitant systemic disease, and also we should rule out pregnancy in female patients. Subacute headaches, which may be there from days to weeks, which usually have insidious onset and progress gradually, may be due to a cerebral tumor or a pseudotumor cerebri, ophthalmic zoster, or a temporal arteritis, and subdural hemorrhage. We should keep this diagnosis in mind whenever we evaluate patient presenting with subacute headache. When a patient presents with acute or subacute headache, we should look for these telltale signs to rule out sinister problems. Vomiting may occur either in migraine or in patients with increased intracranial pressure, which may be due to some mass occupying lesions in the brain. Okay, and fever to rule out a simple issues like rhinosinusitis, or which may be due to meningitis or encephalitis. And also we should look for red eye or visual symptoms such as blurring or halos, which may be due to an acute glaucoma. We should also look for visual field deficits or diplopia or blurring vision, which may be due to again raised intracranial pressure, either which may be due to idiopathic intracranial hypertension or brain mass lesions. We should rule out those conditions, and also sometimes ocular migraine. Lacrimation and facial flushing can occur in cluster headache, which is a good point to note. Rhinorrhea, which indicates the rhinosinusitis, but sometimes rhinorrhea can also occur in cluster headache. Okay, pulsatile tinnitus, important. This is usually seen in idiopathic intracranial hypertension. And preceding aura is classic of migraine with aura, a classical symptom of migraine with aura. And we should also look for any focal neurological deficit, which may indicate a infection such as encephalitis, meningitis, or brain hemorrhages such as intracerebral hemorrhage or subdural hematoma, or even maybe a mass lesion such as a tumor. And seizures, very important to rule out again brain tumor, other mass lesions, or brain infections such as encephalitis or meningitis. Syncope at the onset of headache is usually seen in subarachnoid hemorrhage. Okay, myalgias or vision changes, again very important, and this may occur in giant cell arteritis also. Acute headaches of non-traumatic causes are usually due to following reasons. Okay, and the percentage of different headaches are as follows. Okay, what we see commonly in our outpatient department. Majority of the causes, about as many as 32% of the patients are usually present with the tension type of headache, which is usually followed by the migraine, which is in about 22% of the patients, and this is followed by upper respiratory tract infections, about 15% of the patients. and only a 5% of the patients have rhinogenic headache, that is sinusitis. Okay, and this is followed by hypertension, and further in about 4% of the patients, and gastroenteritis in about 3% of the patients, cerebral tumor in another 3% of the patients, and a small minority of the patients have cervical spine degeneration, that's in about 2% of the patients. General principles of the management of a patient with headache follows these steps. The first step is establishing an accurate diagnosis, and the second step is educating the patients about their condition, its treatment, and its natural history. In step 3, we have to establish a realistic expectations about headache treatment to the patient. Step 4, we have to encourage the patient to participate in their own headache management. Step 5, we have to convince the patient to adjust their lifestyle to avoid headaches if it is due to lifestyle problems. And also in step 6, we have to discuss treatment and medication preferences with the patient. In step 7, we should ensure that patient cooperates with the medical treatment recommendations which you have made to them. And in step 8, we should keep a headache diary, or we should ask the patient to keep a headache diary to monitor frequency and severity of the headaches, which usually gives some clues towards accurate diagnosis. And in step 9, important, that is we have to regularly follow up these patients, and whenever necessary we should refer these patients to relevant specialists such as either an ophthalmologist or a dentist or even a neurologist or neurosurgeon. One caution about imaging: we should avoid indiscriminate use of imaging. There may be several incidental findings on imaging which are usually not alarming. So when we see these findings on imaging, specifically on an MRI brain, if you see a pineal gland cyst, arachnoid cyst, or archaic cleft cyst, followed by widened bifrontal subarachnoid space or a white matter lesions, and Arnold-Chiari type 1 malformations, we need not be worried about it. These patients do not require any further evaluation or management. When we do PNS or head and neck CT scan, we may see a hypoplastic frontal or maxillary sinuses, sometimes sinonasal retention cysts, polyps, or mucosal thickening, lymphadenopathy in the neck, or lesions in the cystic lesions in the parotid gland, or either bilateral osteometal abnormalities. Usually we don't have to worry. In these patients also a simple regular follow-up is required. Found that following International Headache Society classification makes our life easier as far as diagnosing and managing headache concerned. They broadly classify the headaches into 3 groups: primary, secondary, and a third group, not tertiary, third group. Primary headaches are the ones where no anatomic physiological abnormalities are found. Secondary headache, which are usually due to a secondary pathology, secondary cause. And the third group of headaches usually due to either a psychiatric or a change in homeostasis, change in body homeostasis. But again, there may be considerable overlaps among these 3 headaches. Primary headaches are the most common type of headache we come across in our practice, day-to-day practice, and are not associated with any anatomic or physiologic abnormalities. Most patients who present for our evaluation management will have a type of primary headache, usually migraine headaches. The major primary headaches are tension type headache, migraine with or without aura, or trigeminal neuralgias. These primary headaches are a major global problem. Okay, these are the most common forms of headache and have about 20% of worldwide prevalence. And they're also second most common CNS disorders and number 7 most disabling disorder in the world. And also these are one of the most common idiopathic conditions. Common primary headaches are tension type headache or migraine headache or cluster headache, and rarely a giant cell arteritis. Most common type of primary headaches or tension type headaches. However, before we brand the patient to a tension type headache, we should rule out other pathologies as secondary headaches. Here are the diagnostic criteria proposed by International Headache Societies to diagnose a tension type headache. First point, that is headache lasting from 30 minutes to 7 days, and these headaches having at least two of the following characteristics. That is, they are always in bilateral location, and they are persisting or tightening quality, and they are non-pulsating. This is one differentiating point. You should know they are not pulsating, and they are mild to moderate in intensity and not aggravated by routine physical activity. These patients known to go on with their work, and these patients have both of the following. That is, they do not have either nausea or vomiting, and however anorexia may occur, and also no more than one of either photophobia or phonophobia. They will never have both of them simultaneously, and also we should rule out any other cause of headache in these patients. Coming to the treatment of tension headache, the first line of treatment in these patients is what I commonly use. I use tablet amitriptyline, usually a strength of 10 milligram, depending on the severity or frequency of the headache, either once daily, or twice daily, or thrice daily. In patients where amitriptyline is not working, a small fraction of patients, I use doxepin, that's 10 milligram once daily, BID or TID. Okay, and the second line, rather this is the major line of treatment, is relaxation therapy. So we need to teach the patient, to relax physically or mentally, and also get into activities such as yoga and meditation. Second common primary headache is migraine headache, either with aura or without aura. To start with migraine with aura, these are the IHS guidelines or diagnostic criteria for migraine with aura. That is, patient have at least 2 attacks of fulfilling criteria 2 to 4 if aura is present, and these headaches usually last for 4 to 72 hours, and headaches have two of the following. They're always unilateral and pulsating quality. Some fraction of the patients, they may have bilateral headaches also. Usually it is moderate or severe intensity and is aggravated by or causing avoidance of physical activity. Usually patients tend to take rest, okay, and also they cause avoidance of physical activity. One of the following happens during headache, either nausea, vomiting, phonophobia, and photophobia. This photophobia may be present simultaneously, okay, and headache cannot be attributed to another disorder. That means we should rule out any secondary cause of headache. Coming to the migraine without aura, these patients should have at least 5 attacks fulfilling criteria 2 to 4 when aura is not present. That is, headache lasts 4 to 72 hours, like migraine with aura, and headache has two of the following. That is, unilateral pulsating quality, moderate or severe intensity, aggravated by or causing avoidance of physical activity. Okay, and one of the following happens during headache: nausea, vomiting, phonophobia, or photophobia. And headache cannot be attributed to any other disorder. That means we should rule out a secondary pathology in these patients before we brand them as migraine. We have to adopt a two-pronged strategy to treat patients with migraine, that is abortive and preventive strategies. Abortive is important as some of these headaches may be excruciating, and they may interfere with the patient's daily activities. So these patients may require analgesics such as acetaminophen or opioids, and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs also known as anti-phlogistics, and also vasoconstrictors such as caffeine sympathomimetics or serotonergic drugs such as triptans, which are very specific for migraine, and also non-specific drugs like ergots. I prefer usually using triptan, mainly the sumatriptan. Coming to the preventive drugs such as calcium channel blocker, I commonly use the flunarizine in a strength of 10 milligram given once daily in the morning on an empty stomach, and also a beta blocker, again I do not use a big dose. It's just a 10 milligram of propranolol that is taken in the night. And also, if these patients require any abortive treatment in between, they can take any of these drugs in between. Some of these migraine patients may also present with vertigo, which indicates a diagnosis towards vestibular migraine. So the IHS criteria for vestibular migraine is like this. At least 5 episodes of vestibular symptoms of moderate to severe intensity lasting 5 minutes to 72 hours. Current or previous history of migraine aura according to the international classification. One or more migraine features with at least 50% of vestibular episodes and not better accounted for by another vestibular or other diagnosis. Probable vestibular migraine where at least 5 episodes of vestibular symptoms of moderate to severe intensity lasting 5 minutes to 72 hours. And only one of the criteria B and C for vestibular migraine is fulfilled as shown earlier and not better accounted for by any other vestibular or headache diagnosis. So this is about vestibular migraine. However, treatment is easy. It's same as the migraine treatment. Nothing much is required for these patients. Next, third common condition is cluster headache. Okay. The diagnostic criteria for cluster headache are at least 5 attacks fulfilling criteria B to D. That is severe or very severe unilateral, orbital, supraorbital and or temporal pain lasting 15 to 18 minutes if untreated. Headache is accompanied by at least one of the following. That is ipsilateral conjunctival injection or lacrimation, ipsilateral nasal congestion or rhinorrhea, ipsilateral eyelid edema, ipsilateral forehead and facial sweating, ipsilateral meiosis or ptosis, a sense of restlessness or agitation. This is very important, sense of restlessness or agitation in these points. Okay, and also the headache is on temporal region. Okay, attacks have a frequency from every other day to 8 per day, and headache cannot be attributed to any other disorder. And coming to the treatment of cluster headache, the first line of treatment, best treatment is acute treatment. For acute treatment, 100% oxygen given 7 liter per minute over about 15 minutes, and sumatriptan 6 milligram, and sometimes subcutaneous for acute cases. And the second line of treatment is verapamil, a calcium channel blocker, about 250 milligram per day. That's the maximum dose we use depending on efficacy and or tolerability. The other conditions for other headache conditions, little rare, which sometimes may mimic a cluster headache, are paroxysmal hemicrania. Coming to the diagnostic criteria for this condition is at least 20 attacks fulfilling criteria B to D. That is attacks of severe unilateral, orbital, supraorbital or temporal pain lasting 2 to 30 minutes. It's a shorter duration compared to a cluster headache, and headache is accompanied by at least one of the following. So these symptoms may often mimic a cluster headache, that is ipsilateral conjunctival injection or lacrimation, nasal congestion or rhinorrhea, ipsilateral eyelid edema, ipsilateral forehead or facial sweating, and ipsilateral meiosis or under ptosis may be there. One is, unlike cluster headache, patient will not be restless. Attacks have a frequency above 5 per day for more than half the time, although periods with lower frequency may occur. And these attacks are prevented completely by therapeutic dose of indomethacin, 150 milligram 4 times a day orally or rectally, or 100 milligram intravenously. So this is one diagnostic point or differentiating point to differentiate paroxysmal hemicrania from cluster headache, that is response to indomethacin. Hemicrania continua, unlike paroxysmal, this is a continuous headache, and the diagnostic criteria for this headache is headache lasting for more than 3 months fulfilling criteria B to D. That is these all the following characteristics, that is unilateral pain without side shift, daily and continuous without pain-free periods, and moderate intensity but with exacerbations of severe pain. At least one of the following autonomic features occurs during exacerbations and ipsilateral to the side of the pain, that is conjunctival injection or lacrimation under a lacrimation, nasal congestion under rhinorrhea, ptosis under meiosis. Okay, and complete response to therapeutic dose of indomethacin is another diagnostic point for hemicrania continua, and we should rule out other secondary pathologies in this patient before we brand them as hemicrania continua. Giant cell arteritis, another cause of primary headache, however rarer compared to the other causes such as tension type headache or migraine headache. So the diagnostic criteria for giant cell arteritis are any new persisting headache fulfilling criteria C to D, and these patients should have at least one of the following: swollen tender scalp artery with elevated ESRC reactive protein, a temporal artery, superficial temporal artery biopsy demonstrating focal lesions. Okay, and headache develops in close temporal relation to other symptoms and signs of giant cell arteritis, that is jaw claudication, patient complaining of pain while chewing, or polymyalgia rheumatica, and also recent repeated attacks of amaurosis fugax, that is loss of vision. Okay, and also in these patients headache usually resolves within 3 days of high dose steroid treatment. A successful treatment of giant cell arteritis depends on early diagnosis, and start these patients on a prednisone at a dosage of 40 to 60 milligram per day and continue for at least 1 month for successful treatment and to prevent loss of vision in these patients, which is a major risk in these patients. Another common cause of headache we need to rule out in these patients is medication overuse headache. Diagnostic criteria for this is headache present at least more than 15 days, a month or nearly a month fulfilling following criteria. And these headaches, the regular overuse of more than 3 months of one or more drugs that can be taken for acute or symptomatic treatment of headache should be there. So we should ask for history of drug intake and also what type of drugs they're taking. And also headache has developed a markedly worsened during medication overuse, and headache resolves within 3 days of high dose steroid treatment. Yeah, and before branding them as medication overuse headache, we should rule out any other secondary cause of headache and mainly stop whatever medicine they're taking, and this patient may require steroid medication. Now coming to the secondary headache, the most common cause of secondary headaches are trauma, head and neck trauma, followed by vascular disorders and then infections. Okay, either sinus infection or CNS infections, followed by change in homeostasis and psychiatric or substance abuse, and also pericranial neuropathies, other facial pains. Nowadays, these psychiatric causes and also change in homeostasis also considers a separate group as a third group disorders. Many patients, when they present to us, they often tell a diagnosis either because of their own Google search or self-medication, and they brand themselves as sinus headache. So whenever a patient presents with a sinus headache, we should do a careful evaluation of these patients before we brand them as a rhinogenic headache. We should rule out all those primary causes of headache before we consider this as a sinus headache. The Rhinosinusitis Task Force has given following definitions for a rhinogenic headache. That is, it has given major factors and minor factors. Okay, the major factors for rhinosinusitis are facial pain or pressure, which must be associated with another major factor, such as a facial congestion or fullness, nasal obstruction or nasal blockage, nasal discharge or drainage, hyposmia or anosmia, and often associated with fever in acute conditions. The minor factors are headache, fever, which must be associated with another major nasal symptom, halitosis, fatigue, dental pain, cough, or ear pain, pressure or fullness may be there. And here are the rhinosinusitis task force guidelines for acute and chronic rhinosinusitis. Acute sinusitis, where duration of 4 or less weeks is there, 2 or more major factors which I mentioned earlier, or 1 major, 2 minor factors, or nasal purulence on examination. The chronic sinusitis, duration of 12 or more weeks, 2 or more major factors, or 1 major and 2 minor factors, or nasal purulence and examination must be there. Yeah. Current revised criteria for chronic rhinosinusitis proposed by rhinosinusitis task force is like this. That is, on diagnostic endoscopy, there should be a discolored nasal discharge or nasal polyps, and on diagnostic endoscopy, there should be edema or erythema of the middle meatus or ethmoidal bulla, and also a generalized erythema or edema or granulous tissue in the nasal cavity, and on CT-PNS, isolated or diffuse mucosal thickening with bone changes or air fluid levels may be there, or on an X-ray PNS, air fluid levels are greater than 5 mm of opacification of one or more sinuses must be there to say it's a chronic rhinosinusitis. And when we do a diagnostic endoscopy, we should look for following features. That is, one is a septal spur or a concha bullosa, a septal spur with a contact point impinging on the lateral wall of the nose, which may be either a inferior turbinate, middle turbinate, or superior turbinate, a mucopurulent discharge, and also mucosal edema, as seen here, where the uncinate edema is there, and also here abnormalities, anatomical variations, with here a large middle turbinate with a large ethmoidal bulla, which is giving an appearance of double middle turbinate, or even sometimes a medialized uncinate process also gives a similar appearance, and also mucopurulent discharge in the nasopharynx, and also edematous mucosa with contact points or narrowed ethmoid infundibulum or osteometal unit should also be noted. And on paranasal sinus imaging, we should look for deviated nasal septum with sharp spurs, which may be impinging on lateral wall of nose, as we can see here, a spur impinging on a superior turbinate. So there may be a concha bullosa and a septal spur, standalone septal spur may be there, and also a inferior turbinate hypertrophy, which is having a contact point with the nasal septum and paradoxical middle turbinate, or mucosal edema and mucosal thickening in the middle meatus osteometal unit, or nasal polyposis with edema and fluid filling the nasal cavity and the sinuses. We should note all these points. Here are the diagnostic criteria, IHS diagnostic criteria for acute rhinosinusitis. It is headache caused by acute rhinosinusitis and associated with other symptoms or clinical signs of the disorder. So, main point, any headache fulfilling criteria, C, it's clinical nasoendoscopic or imaging evidence of acute rhinosinusitis. Evidence of causation shown by at least 2 of the following, that is, headache has developed in temporal relation to the onset of rhinosinusitis, either or both of the following. Headache has significantly worsened in parallel with worsening of the rhinosinusitis. Headache has significantly improved or resolved in parallel with improvement in or resolution of the rhinosinusitis. Headache is exacerbated by pressure applied over the perineal sinuses, that is sinus tenderness. In the case of a unilateral rhinosinusitis, headache is localized to the ipsilateral to it and not better accounted for by any other international classification of headache disorders. That means you rule out any other pathology. IHS diagnostic criteria for chronic or recurring rhinosinusitis, that is headache caused by a chronic infectious or inflammatory disorder of the perineal sinuses and associated with other symptoms or clinical signs of the disorder. So to diagnose chronic rhinosinusitis, any headache fulfilling following criteria must be there. So clinical nasal endoscopic or imaging evidence of current or past infection or other inflammatory process within the paranasal sinuses. Evidence of causation shown by at least 2 of the following points, That is, headache has developed in temporal relation to the onset of chronic rhinosinusitis. Headache waxes and wanes in parallel with the degree of sinus congestion, drainage, and other symptoms of CRS. Headache is exacerbated by pressure applied over the perineal sinus, that is sinus tenderness. Headache has significantly improved or resolved in parallel with improvement or resolution of the sinusitis. In case of unilateral rhinosinusitis, headache is localized ipsilateral to it, and we should also rule out say other secondary causes of headache. Headaches attributed to nasal mucosa or turbinates or septum. They should fulfill following criteria, that is clinical nasal endoscopic or imaging evidence of a hypertrophic or inflammatory process within the nasal cavity like conchobulosa or a septal spur, and evidence of causation shown by at least two of the following. Headache has developed in temporal relation to the intranasal lesion. Headache has significantly improved or significantly worsened in parallel with improvements in with or without treatment or worsening of the nasal lesion. Headache has significantly improved after local anesthesia of the mucosa in the region of the lesion. Not better accounted for by any other international classification of headache disorders. That is another important point. We should rule out other causes of the headache. So I am not going to cover the management of sinusitis, rhinosinusitis, acute or chronic here, as you are all well aware of it. One important cause of secondary headache I would like to cover here is headache due to temporomandibular joint dysfunction. The diagnostic criteria are recurrent pain in one or more regions of the head and or face fulfilling criteria C and D, and radiograph, MRI or bone scintigraphy demonstrates temporomandibular joint dysfunction disorder. There should be evidence of pain which can be attributed to the temporomandibular joint disorder based on at least one of the following. That is, pain is precipitated by jaw movements and or chewing head or tough food, and there is a reduced range of or irregular jaw opening is there. Noise in one or both temporomandibular joints during jaw movements, and also tenderness of the joint capsule in one or both the temporomandibular joints. And headache usually resolves within 3 months and does not recur after successful treatment of the temporomandibular disorder. And this is one of the another common cause of secondary headache we should be able to diagnose and manage. Coming to third group of headaches, tertiary headaches, I call it. Okay, these are some conditions which are involved in the third group of headaches, that is cranial neuralgias such as trigeminal neuralgia, facial pains, headache due to hypoxia, hypercapnia, which is seen in divers mainly, and psychiatric headaches, headache due to psychiatric reasons, and substance withdrawal. Commonest of all these is trigeminal neuralgia. So the diagnostic criteria are like this. First, paroxysmal attacks of pain lasting from a fraction of a second to 2 minutes, affecting one or more divisions of the trigeminal nerve and fulfilling following criteria. That is, pain has at least one of the following characteristics. It is intense, sharp, superficial or stabbing in nature, and precipitated from trigger areas or trigger factors. And these headaches are stereotyped in the individual patient. There is no clinically evident neurological deficit, and we should rule out other causes of headache. Treatment of trigeminal neuralgia involves mainly the carbamazepine 600 milligrams to 1200 milligram per day in divided doses, and some of the patients may also require other drugs such as phenytoin, baclofen, valproic acid, clonazepam or gabapentin mainly. I would like to conclude my presentation by presenting this last condition, tertiary condition, that is headache due to obstetric sleep apnea syndrome, which is ignored many a times. And this headache usually occurs on awakening in a patient with obstetric sleep apnea, and frequently more than 15 days per month. And usually the headache lasts for more than 30 minutes per episodes, usually bilateral and pressing, mimicking something like tension headache, not associated with any of the nausea, phonophobia, photophobia or vomiting, and persists for less than 72 hours after treatment of sleep apnea. And we have to confirm this secondary headache, secondary to obstructive sleep apnea with the polysomnography. As I stated earlier, the treatment of these headaches follows usually or involves management of obstructive sleep apnea. I have tried to present common headaches which we see in day-to-day in our day-to-day practice with this small presentation of mine. If you have any questions, doubts, clarification, please don't hesitate to call me on this number, mobile number 9342310854. I work as a professor at the Basaveshwara Medical College Hospital in Chitradurga and Karnataka. My email ID is prahladanb@gmail.com. I'm also available on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, but I don't access them too frequently, but you can definitely get in touch with me. Thank you very much for kind attention. I'm going to put a detailed version of this presentation on my website, that is www.orlvarsity.com soon, and I will notify you when it is made available. Thank you very much again. Again, I thank the organizing team, my wholehearted thanks to organizing team for giving me this wonderful opportunity.